And so most people would have thought, once you've studied for a while, that you'd come back and perhaps you'd become an imam of a mosque. And you deliberately chose not to go down that route. Tell us a bit about what influenced your decision.
I think a number of things influenced my decision. Um, One thing was that I had sacrificed 10 years of my adult life. So this wasn't, a lot of people become imams in their teenage years, they go to madrasa, they come out. But for me, it was once I was an adult. I started when I was 21, so I was already an adult. I had delayed getting married. I had delayed having earning. So, all my friends had got married, they got jobs, they had settled. I was in my early 30s. I still had virtually no money. I had no job. Yeah, alhamdulillah, I had got married. I was very lucky. Allah was very gracious. Gave me somebody who came on the path with me. Um, but I didn't have what other people had. I had a number of choices when I came back. Yes, one of them was to become an imam. I didn't think I would last as an imam, to be honest, because, like I said, I'd sacrificed 10 years of my life, and I was going to, do something when I came back. I wasn't just going to sit back and just teach people tajweed, which other people could do. I was going to come back, inshallah, really do something to help my community, start tackling issues that other people were not willing to tackle, have the courage to do things that other people weren't going to do. That wouldn't sit well with an imam. That'd be seen as an imam who's rustling the feathers a bit too much. So I knew I would last a couple of months. If I had committee, people telling me how I should or shouldn't do my job, I would say to them, I'm the one that's got 10 years of Sharia behind me. By all due respect, you run a business, so just manage the mosque, but leave the religious guidance to me. That kind of attitude probably wouldn't have lasted very long in mosques where people think that they employ you. So I wasn't going to, let my sacrifice of 10 years go down the tubes, in the sense that I come back and people shackle me or hold my hands behind my back and tell me what to do. I was going to be the one that was going to tell them what to do. So that attitude wasn't going to last. The other thing was, I never did this for money. If I wanted money, I could have become a hotshot lawyer and made a lot of money. So the money wasn't the determining factor. But at the same time, I felt it was disrespectful that somebody who's an admin person could earn just as much as the imam. So that shows that the community doesn't value the work of the imam or the time he's invested, where they can spend £1 million on refurbishing a mosque, but they will only pay the imam £18,000 a year or something. I had a disgraceful text by somebody a couple of years ago who said that we're looking for an imam for our mosque. I said, okay, send me the details. They were going to give the imam £12,000 a year. And I just said, look, this is disrespectful. This really is disrespectful. And he said, no, but we'll give him a flat to live in. I said, yeah, you're going to give him a damp flat that nobody, is going to live in. I had an imam, who said to me that he was getting £200 a week, and the house was provided by the mosque, but it was full of damp. And he complained and asked them to fix it. No one did anything. And he said his children developed asthma because of it. So I wasn't going to allow people to mess me about.
Now, people obviously talk a lot about mosques and community centres, and you've touched upon some of the issues. What's the real root causes here? What's driving some of this real disconnect to, what standards they would expect of themselves, the people that run these places, and why they have these certain almost alternative expectations of what, the imam, religious figure should
It's about how
expect.
much value we attach to our religion. And let's just be honest, right? I'm very firm believer just calling a spade a spade. I don't mess about. I don't think we've got time to mess about. Time's too precious. I'm 40 now. Time's moving. My life's running out. Your life's running out, and we know there's plenty of issues in the community. And top of my list is not which day we're doing Eid, which a lot of our imams spend a lot of time discussing. I think there's bigger things that we should be talking about than that. So it ultimately comes down to how much do we value our religion, how much do we value Islamic scholarship, how much do we value knowledge. And let's face it, it's not high on the priority list. Most of the people that came to this country did not come for religious reasons, they came for economic reasons. So they're economic migrants, so as to have a better way of life. Yes, alhamdulillah, they've done great work, no doubt about it. The fact that we have mosques today is a credit to them. You can't take that away from them. But I think it's now about improving that system, not just relying on what's been happening for the last 40, 50 years. It's about making those institutes relevant for the day and age we're living in. The reason why Imam Ghazali did what he did was because he lived at a time where knowledge was given value. So that meant he was given a decent salary to become a student of knowledge. When he became a teacher, he was paid well, he had status in society, he had respect, people listened to his opinions. Had he had to work in McDonald's as a part-time job, drive taxis to, make ends meet so that he can go and study, I don't think he would have produced the results that he produced, being a fully fledged, fully funded scholar. It's like universities now. Why do these academics produce books? Because they get paid a good job, a good salary to do a full-time job. So they don't have to worry about second incomes. They're just sitting, concentrating on what they're doing. If you said to those academics, you need to write these books, but you also need to have a part-time job to make a living, then that would take their attention away from their academic studies. They wouldn't produce the same results. So it's just logic. And so I think we need to wake up and realize that if we want quality, right, then we have to invest. So the reason we have great mosques, beautiful mosques, is because we put a lot of money into them. If you're going to say, well, I want to build a mosque, but I'm only going to pay a fraction of that, you're going to end up with a pretty poor building. Same thing, if you want good quality scholarships, good quality scholars, then you have to pay them what a pharmacist or somebody else would pay, because the type of people you want to become your religious leaders, you want them to be academic, you want them to have certain level of education. Those people are going to go into other fields unless you make it attractive. So unless you pay them the same amount or similar amounts, they're going to think, well, why am I going to get 12 grand and get messed about and not be able to look after my family when I could become a pharmacist, earn 40, 50k and have a half decent life? If my community doesn't take it seriously, why should I take it seriously? And you're really just depending on a few individuals who are willing to sacrifice, and we can't really go forward like that.
And what would you say to those people that believe that Islamic education should be free? Because I'm sure, a lot of your courses you charge and there's a fee. But some people are still quite critical about that, and they say, look, it should be accessible to the masses, and Islam, you shouldn't be charged for the sake of knowledge.
Yeah, that's if you look at when the Ummah was in a healthy state, so the times of Ghazali, the state-funded education is. Why do we have free education at Scottish universities? Because the government funds it. If the government decides, like in England, no, everyone's got to pay fees, then what happens? Ultimately, some people will not be able to afford it. So it was state driven. Why do we pay imams? Why do we pay imams in mosques? Most imams in mosques are paid a salary, because the understanding is if we do not pay somebody a salary, no one's going to do the job. So why is it okay to understand that, well, that's a necessity, we have to pay an imam, otherwise he won't do a job, but anyone who's not an imam should do it for free? If the community was funding all these things, yeah, we would do it for free. But when the community is not funding it, things cost money. If I'm using an Apple Mac, who's going to pay for that? If I'm going to hold a talk in a venue, who's going to pay the venue cost? Who's going to pay the printing cost? Who's going to pay all these other costs? Things cost something in life. Even when we could go to Quran classes, or when you get somebody to tutor your child for Quran, do they do it for free or do they pay for it? They pay for it. So we pay, and if we can pay for our secular education, people can send their children to private schools. Why do they send them to private schools? Why don't you just send them to free state schools? Because, well, they're not good enough, so we want to give them the best. Well, if you want to give your children the best in secular studies and you want to give them the best Islamic education, obviously it's going to cost money, because for them to produce that material, for them to have those resources, they have to invest money into it. It doesn't just come out of thin air.
So what happens to these people? Because I mean, is there a light switch that the standards that they expect and that they pay for in the secular world in terms of their own education or the children's education, it seems to be very different to the standards they expect to do when it comes to the mosque or religious teaching them? Is there almost a light switch where they stop thinking and just say...
Its motivation is because ultimately, and this is the truth that a lot of people find it hard to swallow, they do not value their religion at the same level. They value having a good career, having secular education more than Islamic education. And the proof of that I'll give you. I spoke to, and this is when we did this whole project with iSyllabus for schools, producing a decent curriculum for our 11 to 16 years, in other words, our teenagers. We've invested 4 years to 5 years of resources, funded somebody full-time to work on that. That costs money. It didn't come out of thin air. Now, alhamdulillah, we've got a product. Now, when we looked into Islamic schools, ultimately, you have a budget for the English department, the maths department. That's a budget they've got to spend on resources. The worst or the lowest budget is for the Islamic studies in an Islamic school. Why is that? It's because ultimately it's parent driven. Parents still want their kids to have good grades in English, maths, and the Islamic studies is an add-on. It's just that, okay, alhamdulillah, they get a bit of Arabic, get a bit of Islamic studies, but if they got an A in that and failed everything else, they wouldn't be happy. If they got an A in everything and failed Islamic studies, that's more acceptable. So ultimately, they want the same as everybody else. They want their kids to have good secular grades and a little bit of Islam. So the priorities is that Islam is secondary and this is primary. And until that changes, you will always find the same attitude that when it comes to chemistry, or my kid's got a chemistry exam, I will pay £25 an hour for a tutor to get them through the exams. Or my kid's got bad tajweed, I'll get somebody £5 an hour or £10 an hour. So we will pay more for chemistry than for Quran. And what's going to benefit a person in the hereafter?
Thank you for listening to Desert Island Gems. Let us know what you think of the show and keep an eye out for special versions on McMuslim.tv.